as succinctly as we can. Karen has called into the show, and I just want to read a little bit about this. Karen says, you talked about cultural authenticity and understanding. If the organization is talking about changing the culture, how do you know and trust that is really what the organization wants to do and it's not just talk? Let's start with that one, because I think that'll help in some of the follow-up questions that Karen has been sending in. You know, isn't that a great question, Claudette, right?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. And thanks, Karen, for sending that in. It's because this happens what Karen has articulated is something that happens so often in organizations. And I think when it takes me back to authenticity. Because if an organization is being authentic when it's talking about changing its culture, then you can trust that's what it actually means. And when I start working with organizations, that's one thing we really begin talking about, that this needs to be an authentic process. We need to build trust during the process. People need to be able to tell the truth in the sense of having honest conversations. So as I start working with an organization, my team and I are really determining, is this organization open to being authentic and open and honest about the process? It's really key. It's really key.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you not have to be? Because most of the time, when people are talking, they separate culture and climate out. And what happens is this whole idea about authenticity doesn't even get brought to the forefront. Right? Because most organizations, Claudette, they don't have a way to work with this. But this is not just about saying the word authenticity. This is about you creating an approach and a technique to do this. And this is, I think, what you're talking about when you say weave your culture, right?
Absolutely. It is about creating a process to do it and a technique, because when an organization understands that its culture probably should change in order to meet its needs, one thing that people need to be aware of is that we don't know exactly how culture is going to change. We can't decide, you know what, we want a culture that looks exactly like this, so can we make that happen? No, your culture will evolve however it's actually going to evolve. You may have parameters around it, you may guide it, but part of this idea of weaving your culture is listening to the cultural intelligence and starting to weave in pieces of what's there. So you might say, well, in a successful culture, we would be A, B, and C, but you can't completely control the outcome. And I think that's one of the places that some leaders and managers get stuck, because the cultural change starts to feel like it's something they didn't necessarily sign up for. And it's risky for them. So they have to get on board with the fact that they don't exactly know what the outcome is going to look like when they start to weave a different culture.
Yeah, I love the whole idea of talking about weaving, because, today we're talking about cultural intelligence. We're calling it a tapestry of success. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for all of us to remember, this idea of a tapestry, but also, you have this way of talking about this matrix of a brilliant culture. And I love that phrase. I love to be able to talk about brilliant culture, because in today's world, so often we talk about what is not working, right? But now here you are, we're saying, wait a minute. Well, why not weave a brilliant culture?
Absolutely. Why not weave a brilliant culture? And I say the tapestry of success, and I use the word weaving because it's not a linear process. That you will literally see the culture come together, and something will change in communication, something will change in production. Somehow the problem solving will improve or shift. And you'll notice over time that you really do weave a different culture. And that doesn't mean, though, that you can't put together a matrix of what a brilliant culture would look like for your organization, or identify 2 or 3 or 4 levers of how your culture can transform. I'm thinking of an organization I worked with a number of years ago, and this part of this organizational culture was that people really had the freedom to be very unkind to each other. They could be rude in email. Sometimes they weren't even civil in certain conversations. And a new CEO came on board, and he said, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. We need to have a level of respect. We need to be kind to each other. People don't have the right to be unkind or uncivil to each other here. And that was the lever he really worked in that organization to shift the culture around that. Was he modeled it, he spoke about it, He spoke openly and honestly about it. He talked to people about why this culture of unkindness had been allowed to surface and evolve over time. And that's something he really used to shift the culture quite a bit. And it actually led to a lot more innovation because people were not afraid to talk to each other more openly and honestly when they knew some kindness was going to exist.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're talking about respect, and I know we're going to do other shows, and we're going to talk about it more. I shared with you that my research of over a decade or plus ago really put respect on the top. I know there've been research on that since, but isn't it interesting that you and I are talking about that because now we've got what is a common sense thing, right? Now we've got all this research to support it. But authenticity doesn't mean that we are radically honest with someone to the point of destroying them emotionally either.
Absolutely not. We're not talking about that. We're talking about using our emotional intelligence in an authentic way, right? How do we talk to people in a way in which they still feel respected, in which we can be open and honest in a way that's as humanly kind as possible? So no, we're not talking about authenticity is not a code for tell the truth no matter how in any way you want to tell it. No, definitely not.
Wow, I can't believe how quickly this time with us together has gone by. But I wanted to give you an opportunity here to really, address some of the things we've talked about today. Some of the personal things that you'd like to share with us. Your personal message for the show, as well as for this fabulous way to work with organizations. And thank you so much, Claudette, for all that you do. And thank you for creating this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So glad to be on the show. So going back to Peter Drucker's quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think we can't remember that enough sometimes in organizations. Really we need to think of culture as part of the larger whole, the part of the larger fabric of the entire organization and not separate it out as it sometimes is. So that's part of what I would say is remember, culture eats strategy for breakfast and really listen to your organization's cultural intelligence. Even as an individual person in an organization, you can start listening to what wants to emerge in your culture. What are people saying? And really start understanding how the culture is part of your tapestry of success in your organization.
Wow, I love this. Now, I know we're going to do many, many more shows on this, and I'm excited about them. I want to just ask you this question. How does this and how has this journey for you affected you in the way that you're now looking at working with organizations? Because this is a brand new platform for you. And what I love is it's not brand new. It's something you've been doing for decades, but now you've put it out in a way that other people understand the importance of it, right?
Yes. So it's changed my work in organizations. As you said, I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
But it allows us to actually tell the truth more quickly. When we start talking about authenticity, when we start looking at culture and how the culture is driving a lot of things in the organization versus coming in and saying, let's improve productivity or let's have more effective communication. And both of those are great. We also look at, well, what is in the culture that's driving the communication to not be effective? How is the culture influencing productivity to the positive or negative? So I feel like it brings more truth-telling into the way that I work with organizations.
Wow. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about what we're talking about here. And the other thing is congratulations to you, Claudette, for coming up to the forefront with this. I am so thrilled about the book that you're writing about this, the radio series we're doing it. And for Karen, you're listening to this show. I know you're going to be telling your friends, your bosses, and everybody else. And we've given you a way to contact Claudette directly. I'm excited about this, Claudette. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you.
All right, everybody out there, I want to thank you for tuning us in, turning us on. I'm getting some other messages. Yes, if you've missed the first part of this show, you will be able to listen to this later on today, and then we will have on-demand 24/7 popped up by tomorrow if you've missed it. Stay tuned. We've got much more coming your way with Claudette Rowley and Cultural Brilliance Radio, folks. Guess what? The DNA of organizational excellence. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio with Claudette Rowley. Conversations that are transforming the world of culture and business. You can download this podcast and find out more about Claudette and her breakthrough work at ClaudetteRowley.com.